right, so this is going to be the movie review. This one's called The Mummy, 1932. This is going to be another recommendation. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I love this flick. We love gothic horror on this channel. The movie poster is super cool. It comes to life. Karloff, the uncanny, in The Mummy, with a bunch of other actors that I've never seen before, with the exception of Edward Van Sloan. We like the flat-chested white woman in this movie. Yet another B-cup white woman. I'm assuming this is pre-code. Yep. Otherwise, that white woman wouldn't be able to show off her tiny cleavage. The Mummy is a 1932 U.S. pre-code supernatural horror film directed by Karl Freund. The screenplay is by John L. Balderston, and it was adopted from a treatment written by Nina Wilcox Putnam and Richard Shire, released by Universal Studios as part of the Universal Monsters franchise. The film stars Boris Karloff, Zita Johann, David Manners, Edward Van Sloan, and Arthur Byron. We like Zita Johann, Austrian actress. She looks good. I like her hair and her dress. She's a knockout. In the film, Karloff stars as Imhotep, an ancient Egyptian mummy who was killed for attempting to resurrect his dead lover, Ankh-es-en-Amam. After being discovered and accidentally brought to life by a team of archaeologists, he disguises himself as a modern Egyptian named Ardith Bey, and he searches for Ankh-es-en-Amam, whom he believes has been reincarnated in the modern world. While less profitable than its predecessors, Dracula and Frankenstein, The Mummy was still a commercial and critical success, becoming culturally influential and spawning several sequels, spin-offs, remakes, and reimaginings. The film and its sequels cemented the mummy archetype as a staple of the horror genre and Halloween festivities. Produced by Universal Pictures, distributed by Universal Pictures. Release date, December 22nd, 1932. Running time, 73 minutes. Very short film, but very well done. The way they lit up Boris Karloff's eyeballs whenever he was casting an Egyptian curse. Country, United States. Language, English. And budget, $196,000. In 1921, an archaeological expedition led by Sir Joseph Wemple finds the mummy of an ancient Egyptian high priest named Imhotep. An inspection of the mummy by Wemple's friend, Dr. Muller, reveals that the mummy's viscera were not removed, and from the signs of struggling, Muller deduces that only Imhotep had been wrapped like a traditional mummy. He had been buried alive. Although Imhotep had been wrapped like a traditional mummy, he had been buried alive. Also buried with Imhotep is a casket with a curse on it. Despite Muller's warning, Sir Joseph's assistant, Ralph Norton, opens it and he finds an ancient life-giving scroll, the Scroll of Thoth. All right. Thoth is an ancient Egyptian deity. In art, he is often depicted as a man with the head of an ibis or baboon, animal sacred to him. His feminine counterpart was Seshat, and his wife was Mat. He was the god of the moon, wisdom, knowledge, writing, hieroglyphics, science. He translates the symbol and then reads the words aloud. We're talking about Ralph Norton, causing Imhotep to rise from the dead. Norton is horrified, and he begins to laugh hysterically as Imhotep shuffles off with the scroll. And they send Ralph Norton to the loony bin. We've already got the first curse under Imhotep's belt. 10 years later, Imhotep has assimilated into modern society, taking the identity of an eccentric Egyptian historian named Adath Bey. He calls up Sir Joseph's son, Frank, and Professor Pearson. And Imhotep, Adath Bey, shows them where to dig to find the tomb of the princess Ankh-es-en-Aman. After locating the tomb, the archaeologists present its treasures to Cairo Museum, after which Bey disappears. The professor and Frank recall that before he died, Norton went insane, and Norton claimed the mummy had come to life, and the mummy had walked away from his sarcophagus, which is quite true. We saw it happen in the movie. But they still think that the coffin and the scroll of Thoth were both stolen. Bey soon encounters Helen Grosvenor, a half-Egyptian woman who's actually an Austrian actress, playing the role, bearing a striking resemblance to the princess who stays with Muller. Bey falls in love with her, but so does Frank. After it is discovered that Bey is the mummy Imhotep, Muller urges Joseph to burn the skull of Thoth, but when Joseph tries to do so, Bey uses his magical powers to kill him, and then he hypnotizes a Nubian to be a slave. It's a white dude in blackface. Bey uses his magical powers to kill him. And then we're talking about Joseph here. Joseph is killed, and he's got white dude in blackface as his new slave. After the servant does so, he hypnotizes Helen to come to his place. And there he reveals to her that his horrific death was punishment for sacrilege. How can you commit sacrilege against a satanic religion? As he attempted to resurrect his lover, Princess Ankh-es-en-Aman. Believing her to be the princess's reincarnation, he attempts to make her his immortal bride by killing, mummifying, and resurrecting her. Oh, he wants to have a mummy bride, and he got the Austrian actress to go alongside Sort of, but not really. Frank and Muller come to her rescue, but they are immobilized by Bay's magical powers. However, Helen is saved when she remembers her ancestral past life. I guess she really was reincarnated. Don't ask me how Boris Karloff knew that. And she prays to the goddess Isis to come to her aid, another satanic false idol. Imhotep's spell over the Nubian is broken, causing the Nubian to fall and to flee in terror. The statue of Isis raises its arms, and it emits a flash that sets the scroll of Thoth on fire. This breaks the spell that had given Imhotep his immortality, causing him to crumble to dust. Why did they bury the scroll of Thoth if it was desecrated, and yet it still somehow made Boris Karloff immortal? I'm getting confused by this magical powers, but it's pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Nonetheless, I thought it was fun. Inspired by the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 and the alleged curse of the pharaohs, producer Karl Lamel Jr. commissioned story editor Richard Shire to find a novel to form a basis for an Egyptian-themed horror film, just as the novels Dracula and Frankenstein inspired their 1931 films Dracula and Frankenstein. Shire found none, although the plot bears a strong resemblance to a short story by Arthur Conan Doyle entitled The Ring of Thoth. So on Wikipedia, there's some concept art for Cagliostro, a film project based on the historical occultist Alessandro Cagliostro, which served as the basis for what became The Mummy. Shire and writer Nina Wilcox Putnam learned about Alessandro Cagliostro, and they wrote a 9-page treatment entitled Cagliostro. The story, set in San Francisco, was about a 3,000-year-old magician who survives by injecting nitrates. Pleased with the Cagliostro concept, Lamel hired John L. Bartiston to write the script. Bartiston had contributed to Dracula and Frankenstein, and Bartiston covered the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb for the New York World when he was a journalist, so he was more than familiar with the well-publicized tomb unearthing. Balderston moved the story to Egypt, and he renamed the film and its title character Imhotep after the historical architect. He also changed the story from one revenge upon all the women who resembled the main character's ex-lover to one where the main character is determined to revive his old love by killing and mummifying her reincarnated self before resurrecting her with the spell of the Skull of Thoth. So she had already been reincarnated, and Boris Karloff wants to reincarnate her back to what she was. Balderston invented the Skull of Thoth, which gave an aura of authenticity to the story. Thoth was the wisest of the Egyptian gods who, when Osiris died, helped Isis bring her love back from the dead. Thoth is believed to have authored the Book of the Dead, which may have been the inspiration for Balderston's Scroll of Thoth, Another likely source of inspiration is the fictional Book of Thoth that appeared in several ancient Egyptian stories. Here's another film poster, Karloff the Uncanny in The Mummy. And then we've got another one here. Pretty cool looking movie posters. Boris Karloff and Zita Johann in a climactic scene from the movie. By the time Zita Johann is being sacrificed, reincarnated, remummified, whatever, she's hardly dressed in anything. Her top is just covering her breast, and that's it. Everything else is exposed. Karl Freund, the cinematographer on Dracula, was hired to direct, making this his first film in the United States as a director. Freund had also been the cinematographer on Fritz Lang's Metropolis. So I guess I should give him director's credit. Karl Freund. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. Freund? Is it Freund? I don't know. Karl Freund. All right. Got his name in the description and the tags. The film was retitled The Mummy. Freund cast Zita Johann, who actually believed in reincarnation, and Freund named her character Ak-Es-En-Aman after the only wife of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. The real Ak-En-Aman's body had not been discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun, and her resting place was unknown. Her name, however, would not have been unknown to the general public. Filming began in September 1932, and it was scheduled for 3 weeks. Karloff's first day was spent shooting the mummy's awakening from his sarcophagus. Makeup artist Jack Pierce had studied photos of Seti I's mummy to design Imhotep. Pence began transforming Karloff at 11 a.m., applying cotton, collodion, and spirit gum to his face, clay to his hair, and wrapping him in linen bandages treated with acid and burnt in an oven. Finishing the job at 7 p.m., Karloff finished his scenes at 2 a.m., and another 2 hours were spent removing the makeup. Karloff found the removal of gum from his face was painful, and overall found the day the most trying ordeal I had ever endured. I'm sure Christopher Lee felt the same when he did his mummy film. Although the images of Karloff wrapped in bandages are the most iconic taken from the film, Karloff appears on the screen in this makeup only for the opening vignette. The rest of the film sees him wearing less elaborate makeup. Yeah, he's just got a wrinkled face and a funny looking Shriver's hat and some kind of funky Egyptian gown. A lengthy and detailed flashback sequence was longer than now exists. That flashback sequence reminded me a lot of Blood Feast, but less violent. This sequence showed the various forms Ak SN Aman was reincarnated in over the centuries. So she was reincarnated more than twice already. Henry Victor is credited in the film as Saxon Warrior, despite his performance having been deleted. Stills exist of those sequences, but the footage, save for Karloff's appearance and the sacrilegious events leading up to his mummification in ancient Egypt, are lost. The piece of classical music heard during the opening credits, taken from Tchaikovsky's ballet Swan Lake, was previously also used in the same arrangement for the opening credits of Universal's Dracula in 1931 and Murders in the Rue Morgue in 1932. It would be reused as the title music for the same studio's Secret in the Blue Room. Something that I've got to add along with what else? Well, I guess I'll add Secret of the Blue Room when I'm done with this movie review on YouTube, and that's it. The Scroll of Thoth is a fictional artifact, though likely based on the Book of the Dead. Thoth, the Egyptian god of knowledge, is said to be the inventor of hieroglyphs and author of the Book of the Dead. The film also makes reference to the Egyptian myth of the goddess Isis resurrecting Osiris after his murder by his brother Set. There's an actual satanic cult here in San Francisco called the Temple of Set. They allegedly raped a bunch of young children at the Presidio, but the army didn't charge them with anything. Conspirators were caught in a plot to assassinate Pharaoh Ramses III around 1151 BC. Papyrus trial transcripts reveal that the conspirators were prescribed great punishments of death, and architectural evidence led to the suggestion that at least one of them may have been buried alive. Although such punishment was not common practice, this discovery probably influenced the film's screenplay. Oh, kind of like how Jesus was crucified, but it wasn't really common practice, I guess, at that time either. There is no evidence to suggest that the ancient Egyptians believed in or considered the possibility of reanimated mummies. Mummification was a sacred process meant to prepare a dead body to carry the soul through the afterlife, not for being reincarnated and living again on earth. So they kind of mixed elements of Buddhism and ancient Egyptian Temple of Set stuff. And they made their own, Universal made their own religion. While it is possible that some individuals were mummified by being buried alive, it is unlikely that ancient Egyptians would think resurrection was possible, because they were very aware of the fact that all the necessary organs had been removed and the body would be of little use on Earth anymore. Egyptologist Stuart Tyson Smith notes that the idea of mobile mummies was not entirely alien to ancient Egypt, citing one of the Hellenistic era stories of Setna Quamos, which features both the animated mummy of Naneferkaptah and a fictional Book of Thoth, and may have inspired screenwriter John Balderston. Okay. So I stand corrected. It was actually based on something. Sorry, that was just the mailman. I thought it was the owners were here. I was going to close the door. All right. The Los Angeles Times was positive, although the film otherwise gained mixed critical reviews despite being a modest box office success. When the film opened at New York's RKO Mayfair Theater, a reviewer for the New York Times was utterly unimpressed. For the purposes of terror, there are two scenes in The Mummy that are weird enough in all conscience. In the first, the mummy comes alive and a young archaeologist, going quite mad, laughs in a way that raises the hair on the scalp. In the second, Imhotep is embalmed alive. And that moment when the tape is drawn across the man's mouth and nose, leaving only his wild eyes staring out of the coffin, is one of decided horror. But most of the mummy is costume melodrama for the children. I don't know about that. My church friend said that he was terrified of the mummy when he was a kid. The film was a success at the box office in the United Kingdom. Review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reports a whopping 89% score based on 45 reviews with an average rating of 7.9 out of 10. The site's consensus states, relying more on mood and atmosphere than the thrills typical modern horror fare, Universal's The Mummy sets a masterful template for mummy-themed films to follow. Cliff Alaperti at Immortal Ephemera opines, the perfect explanation of the mummy's quality comes from film historian William K. Everson's closing comment in the brief mummy section of his 1974 classics of the horror film. If one accepts The Bride of the Frankenstein for its theater and The Body Snatcher for its literacy, then one must regard The Mummy as the closest that Hollywood ever came to creating a poem out of horror. The Mummy has been decried for othering Eastern culture, especially portraying it as being more primitive and superstitious than Western culture. In one scene, Helen Grossmaner longs for the real classical Egypt, disparaging that she is in contemporary Islamic Egypt. This is viewed by critic Caroline T. Schroeder as a slight against Islamic culture at the time. According to Mark A. Hall of the Perth Museum and Art Gallery, film portrayals of Egypt, especially in Egyptian archaeology, often deal with themes of appropriating and controlling the dangers of non-European cultures, or deal with the past if it relates to legend and superstition. Mummies, Hall says, are as common example of this, while he commended the archaeological wisdom espoused by Sir Joseph Wemple in the film. He writes that much more is learned from studying bits of broken poetry than from all the sensational finds, and that archaeologists' job is to increase the sum of human knowledge of the past, and mentions that the archaeological element was only used as a foil for the supernatural elements. As a result, per Hall, what it and similar films offered was a depiction of archaeology as a colonial imposition by which cultural inheritance is appropriated. All right. Lon Chaney Jr. appeared as Karras the Mummy in 3 follow-ups to the original film. Here we go. More mummy movies to add to my list. Unlike other Universal Monsters films, The Mummy had no official sequel. The character was reimagined in The Mummy's Hand, 1940, and its sequels, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, The Mummy's Curse, and the studio's comedy horror crossover film Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. So we've got The Mummy's Hand, 1940, The Mummy's Tomb, 1942, The Mummy's Ghost, 1944, The Mummy's Curse, 1944, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, 1955. These films focus on the titular character named Caris, also known as Clarice in the Abbott and Costello film. The Mummy's Hand recycled footage from the original film for use in the telling of Caris's origins, where Karloff is clearly visible in several of these recycled scenes but was not credited. Tom Tyler played the mummy in The Mummy's Hand, and Lon Chaney Jr. played the mummy in The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, and The Mummy's Curse. In the late 1950s, British Hammer film productions took up the mummy theme, beginning with The Mummy, 1959, which, rather than being a remake of the 1932 Karloff film, is based on Universal's The Mummy's Hand, 1940, and The Mummy's Tomb, 1942. Hammer's follow-ups, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, 1964, The Mummy's Shroud, 1966, and Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, 1971, are unrelated to the first film or even to each other, apart from the appearance of the Scroll of Life and Curse of the Mummy's Tomb and Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. The much larger Universal film, The Mummy, 1999, also suggests that it is a remake of the 1932 film, but it has a different storyline and is more similar to The Mummy's Hand than the original. In common with most postmodern remakes of classic horror and science fiction films, it may be considered as such in that it is produced, distributed by the same studio. Its titular character is again named Imhotep, resurrected by the Book of the Dead and out to find the present-day embodiment of the soul of his beloved Anksunamon, and features an Egyptian named Ardith Bey, in this case, a guard of the city and of Imhotep's tomb. This film spawned two sequels with The Mummy Returns and The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, 2001 and 2008, respectively. The Mummy Returns also spawned a spin-off of that sequel, The Scorpion King, 2002, which in turn spawned a prequel, The Scorpion King 2, Rise of the Warrior, 2008, and three sequels, The Scorpion King 3, Battle for Redemption, 2012, The Scorpion 4, Quest for Power, 2015, which also has Dawn the Dragon Wilson, and Scorpion King Book of Souls, 2018. Also a short-lived animated series simply titled The Mummy, ran from 2001 to 2003. I've got to get all this stuff. I've already seen and reviewed The Scorpion King 4, Quest for Power, though. In 2012, Universal announced a reboot of the film more in line with horror films from the Universal Monsters film franchise. The reboot was directed by Alex Kurtzman. The Mummy was planned as the first film in a series of interconnected monster films, as Universal had planned to build a shared Universal film series out of its vault of classic monster movies. Tom Cruise stars in the film. Sophia Botella plays Princess Amunet, the mummy, for the film, while Russell Crowe appears as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, two roles which had been previously been portrayed by Boris Karloff in the studio's previous film franchise. It received negative reviews and is considered a box office bomb, scrapping the plans for the upcoming films of the Dark Universe. I've got to get that one too. The film is recognized by American Film Institute in these lists. 2001 AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills nominated. 2003 AFI's 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains, Emotep nominated villain. In the 1990s, MCA Universal Home Video released The Mummy on VHS as part of the Universal Monsters Classic Collection, a series of releases of Universal Classic monster films. The film was also released on Laserdisc. In 1999, Universal released The Mummy on VHS and DVD as part of the Classic Monsters collection. In 2004, Universal released The Mummy, The Legacy Collection on DVD as part of the Universal Legacy Collection. On October 19, 2004, Universal released The Mummy, The Legacy Collection on DVD as part of the Universal Legacy Collection. This 2-disc set also includes The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, and The Mummy's Curse. In 2008, Universal released The Mummy on DVD as a 2-disc 75th anniversary edition as part of the Universal Legacy series. In 2012, The Mummy was released on Blu-ray as part of the Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection box set, which includes a total of 9 films from the Universal Classic Monsters series. The following year, The Mummy was included as part of the 6-film Blu-ray set, Universal Classic Monsters Collection, which also includes Dracula, Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, and The Wolfman. In 2015, the 6-film set was issued on DVD. And I'm guessing this is the 6-film set 2015 edition that Adrian has. Because a lot of these movies he recommended to me at the same time. He must have bought this DVD set around the same time he was recommending these films to me. In 2014, Universal released The Mummy Complete Legacy Collection on DVD. This set contains 6 films: The Mummy, The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, The Mummy's Curse, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. In 2016, The Mummy received a Walmart exclusive Blu-ray release featuring a glow-in-the-dark cover. In September 2017, the film received a Best Buy exclusive Steelbook Blu-ray release with cover art by Alex Ross. That same year, the 6-film Complete Legacy Collection was released on Blu-ray. In August 2018, The Mummy, The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, The Mummy's Curse, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy were included in the Universal Classic Monsters Complete 30-Film Collection Blu-ray box set. This box set also received a DVD release. Later in October, The Mummy was included as part of a limited edition Best Buy exclusive Blu-ray set titled Universal Classic Monsters, the Essential Collection, which features artwork by Alex Ross. All right, moving right along. Nobody's in the chat room. Adrian complained that I wasn't doing enough bit during the past week, and here I am doing content, and nobody's in the chat room. The Mummy, 1932, TV 14, 1 hour, 13 minutes. Awesome movie posters on there with the most beautiful woman you can imagine. Alongside the Mummy. Gets a whopping 7 out of 10 on IMDb, 32,000 ratings. A resurrected Egyptian mummy searches Cairo for the girl he believes to be his long-lost princess. More like this, The Invisible Man, The Wolfman, Dracula, and Bride of Frankenstein. I added The Wolfman to my list. I can't remember whether I've seen it or not, but I'll watch it again and review it if I'm alive for another 30 years. Unlike the other Universal classic monsters, the other Mummy movies have no direct relation to this one. The other films feature a different mummy named Karis, who is resurrected by Tana, leaves to be controlled by a modern person similar to a voodoo zombie. The Mummy's Hand, 1940, reuses footage from this film, but changes Imhotep to Karis. It was Karis who would appear in the other Universal and Hammer films. Imhotep wouldn't reappear in theaters until The Mummy, 1999. Imhotep has been sentenced to the nameless death, yet his name is still inscribed on his coffin. The ancient Egyptians had chisels and should have been able to destroy the glyphs on the coffin that made up Imhotep's name, but was untouched when his mummy was found. Quotes as Norton laughs maniacally after seeing the mummy leave the archaeologist's workshop with the sacred scroll. Sir Joseph Wemple, what's the matter, man? For heaven's sake, what is it? Ralph Norton, he went for a little walk. You should have seen his face. The credit begins over a rotating model of pyramid site. Then the main title, The Mummy, is made with 3D rock letters on the side of a pyramid. This was edited into The Mummy's Hand, 1940. Soundtracks Misterioso, composer unknown, precedes Swan Lake during opening credits. All right. Here's a less flattering review. I'm giving this one 10 out of 10. This person, Ma Cortez, is giving it a 7 out of 10. And IMDb is giving me a hard time. All right, so I've got a ton of mummy movies and one thriller to add. I'm going to add all the Universal Mummy movies, the Hammer ones, and also the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that got panned and was a huge bomb. I got to get that one too. All right. This is from Ma Cortez, dated October 9th, 2019. Here we go. The title of the review, giving it a 7 out of 10, is Classic Universal with a creepy and eerie appearance by the great Boris Karloff, who holds a perfect makeup. This Universal classic, 1933, The Mummy, that had many follow-ups, was finally directed by Karl Freund with Boris Karloff, Edward Van Sloan, David Manners, and it results to be the first and classic rendition of The Mummy. As a group of archaeologists seeking lost tomb of Egyptian kings at an archaeological dig 1921, examine a sarcophagus from an unmarked grave, then a macabre mummy is revived after thousands of years. An ancient Egyptian mummy is awakened from his centuries old sleep when a royal tomb is desecrated. Those suffer consequences their acts to everyone's regret. So Imhotep, Boris Karloff, bearing a heavy and masterly made makeup, as we can almost smell the dust and must. A 4,000-year-old who was disgraced and buried alive is now revived. The very deadly mummy takes revenge on some archaeologists and descendants who desecrated the tomb. Then the scary, sinister mummy revenges himself on those who have defiled his tomb, and he attempts to get his aim, heroine Helen, Zita Johann, whom the rap one believes is a reincarnation of his long-loved Akhena's Amon, his beloved princess. However, the macabre mummy attacks anyways and suddenly stops when meets the reincarnation of the ancient sweetheart. Horror classic based on the novel by John Balderston, effective atmosphere, sense of awe and wonder, along with fine performances, entertaining blend of thrills, chills, drama, terror, and visual are most impressive. Remarkable makeup and eerie scenes make it chilling and frightening. Superb atmosphere, flavorful music make this one of the best terror film movies from Universal, using intelligence and interesting dialogue rather than guts and blood to horrify its audience. In spite of its age, this all-time classic has lost none of its qualities. Boris is terrific as the terrifying mummy, and David Manners is good as an obstinate archaeologist, one of the men he frightens being attacked by the mummy, as well as Zita Johann as the damsel in distress. The Mummy is masterfully incarnated by Boris Karloff, giving one of his best movie portrayals, along with Frankenstein. Boris is almost irrecognizable beneath layers of skillful makeup, undergoing 8 hours of top-notch makeup to transform him into a creepy mummy, being layered on his face filament by filament and actually giving the impression of having been hidden away for centuries. The motion picture excellently photographed by Charles Stumar in tenebrous cinematography, plenty of lights and shades, being very well made under the perfect direction of an expert cinematographer called Freund, who made too few appearances in the filmmaker's chair. It marked the direction debut of this famed German cameraman and master of expressionist photography, rating better than average. It's high power, entertaining. Other pictures about mummy character are the following ones. This main is the one, The Mummy 1932, being the initial appearance of the mummy. Reawakened after thousands of years, and sequels rapidly ran out of ideas as to what to do with him once he was on the loose, such as Mummy's Hand, 1940, by Christy Cabani with Dick Foran, Wallace Ford, and Cecil Calloway. The Mummy's Ghost, 1944, by Reginald LeBorg with Lon Chaney Jr., John Carradine, Robert Lowry. I may have seen The Mummy's Ghost. I'll have to double check. The Mummy's Curse, 1944, by Leslie Goodwins with Lon Chaney Jr., Peter Coe. The Mummy, directed by legend from Hammer Productions, Terence Fisher, with Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Felix Allimer, Eddie Byrne. It's followed by Mummy Shroud, 1967, also produced by Hammer Films, directed by John Gilling, with Andre Morel and Elizabeth Sellers. The Spanish, The Mummy's Revenge, 1973, by Carlos Allred, with Paul Naschy or Jacinto Molina, Jack Taylor, Helga Line, and modern updating full of computer generator FX as The Mummy, 1999, by Stephen Sommers, with Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, and Mummy Returns, 2001, with similar players and The Rock, and recent The Mummy with Tom Cruise and Sophie Botella. So this is a more comprehensive list here from Ma Cortez because it includes the Spanish, The Mummy's Revenge with Paul Naschy. So I'm going to try to add all those movies to my list now. Take a little nappy poo as I go further down my list as we speak. Number 1 on the list is Midnight Phantom, 1935. Number 2 is Sea of Love, 1989. And number 3 is The Lighthouse, 2019. So those are my next 3. I'm on a roll. I'm up to 2 movie reviews this week, and I'm not even done yet. I'll try to get to the 3rd one before I go to bed tonight. I don't think I can do a 4th one on Monday, but then I've got the 4-day weekend coming up during September, the beginning of Lent, when I start fasting and trying to lose weight. I gained about 30 pounds. Now it's time for me to lose some weight. I can do it. All right. Well, thanks for checking out my channel. Welcome to another edition of movie reviews. And I should have another one up in around 3 or 4 hours later.